really seen a quarter of a person before. She had what is supposed to be her, her urethra and everything still intact down that side, but her bum and everything was like, it wasn't until we literally started turning this patient, we realized that the dressing that was on the back of this patient down to the bum, like everything was like as black as like a regular car. When you see a car, yeah, the dressing there, it never looked like it changed for decades. This lady, she had like a total ecosystem going on herself there, because the amount of maggots that was there, we were like, okay, then you disturb this kind of environment, you're only putting the patient at risk now for death. Blue Fox from the Bluegrass, greetings from Kentucky. Thank you so much for tuning in. Thank you so much for tuning in. Courtney says, what is the worst thing you see as an NP? The worst thing I've seen as an NP so far. What's the worst thing I've seen so far? Well, I've never really seen like a 600-pound. Well, that was in the emergency room. I saw a 600-pound person that we literally couldn't move. We couldn't do anything. Like, we had to call out the fire department to help with moving this patient. Yeah. But apart from that, as an NP, the worst thing I've seen so far, I guess all of them I can, deal with. But there was another morbidly obese guy, who lives alone. And he was talking and everything, So it's not like to the point where he's not able to do anything. But he had a wound that, I was supposed to try and look at. And I couldn't do it because this gentleman couldn't do anything. He never had anybody to come and, help with rolling him over. And so, yeah, that one was a little bit sad. Like, I've seen a lot of cases where, it's more, they don't really have any help. And so their place is just like in a deplorable condition. Some persons cannot do anything. I had a patient the other day who I went to visit, another morbidly obese patient, and I was waiting for probably like, say, 20 minutes, and only to find out she cannot get out of the bathroom. She's stuck in the bathroom. So that's it. But the cases are not that bad. As I say, it's more the living condition, and a lot of them don't have any help, and some of them, they definitely don't have any insurance, and that makes it even worse for them. Because can you imagine, you don't have any family member coming over to help you, and then you don't qualify for Medicaid for whatever reason, and so you're not making much money from it. You're not making much money. Some persons are getting like, say, $300, $500, for disability, and they still have rent to pay. They can't buy a diaper, and so when you go inside of the house, it's like just urine all over, because they just pee where they are, and it's just awful. It's just awful. It's just awful. So it's just a living condition, because yes, even though a lot of the persons are poor, or low income, they have a structure. They have house, they have a bathroom they can use, but some of them can't reach to the bathroom. But the other thing about it is that these are the same people that are not even eating properly. Because the other day I had one of these gentlemen, and I went there, and it's 9 o'clock in the morning, and this gentleman is eating Doritos with pizza and Pepsi. And I'm like, okay, then, so how are we going to get your diabetes control? How are you going to lose weight? So I don't even know. But it's just a sad situation. You go out there and see them in those kind of condition. Yeah. But the worst thing I've seen in all my, my time as a nurse is a patient who came in. At the time, I was in the emergency room. And I remember we got a call. We got a call from the ambulance to say that there was a patient coming in with, maggots. And I am always preparing myself for the worst when it comes on to patients coming in the emergency room. So when I hear if we have a trauma coming in, or if I hear we have maggots coming in, this girl is going in full blown, just like when COVID was going on and you see people in goggles and mask and double glove up and all those things. That's me. That's how I prepare when I have any form of trauma, because I don't know what it is. And I don't want to be smelling like urine, pee, vomit at the end of my shift. I want to be still feeling clean and not worried about, probably somebody, body fluids getting on my clothing. And so there was this patient that called regarding a patient coming in, and the patient was having maggots. And so, me in America, yes, maggots are everywhere, but we have home health service here, so you're not expecting some really big maggots. You're thinking about some probably tiny ones. So I went ahead and put on everything just like what I normally do, and everybody was like, why are you doing that? Why are you doing that? And I was able to go in at the time when they came with the patient. So this patient was wrapped up real nicely, like a burrito, in a white sheet. And the paramedics took the patient off to the stretcher and was there. So my culture, we take care of you, but I'm not gonna be too personal with you when when you're a patient. Yeah, man, I know my limit, so even if I am in my gown and everything, I'm going to give you the best care, because that's why I put on my gown, to make sure I'm not I'm not there trying to do something and I'm doing something like this, because I don't want my clothes to be touching on the bed or on the patient, because the patient is messy and I don't want to mess myself up. So I put on the gown to make sure I'm a little bit more comfortable with that space, caring for my patient. Nobody not going to feel bad. And so it was the same thing. I was there, we had the patient off on the stretcher. So anyways, I had my N95 on. I usually put a little, perfume on my mask, because I don't know what is coming in. So, just to make sure I can breathe properly. And it was a good thing I did that, because by the time we start, removing the sheet from the patient, at the time, I love my incontinent pads. And if anybody will tell you, there are pads that you put on the bed, so whenever the patient pees, you can always have that remove and the patient can still feel clean and dry, and you just replace it. So I always put those on my beds when it comes on to elderly patients, any form of trauma, because once I'm finished, I like to make sure the patients are looking clean and comfortable. So I put those on the stretcher. And while we're there unraveling the sheet from this patient, I realized that there was a little black thing, that was like taking a little time wiggling on this white sheet on the stretcher. So I am there at that time, as I say, I was still in my gown, and I'm like, okay, then there was this big maggot, crawling out on the white sheet. And then lo and behold, you have some other colleagues of mine who was there holding on to what's, the patient. So we're there trying to get the sheets unraveled, because at this time now I feel like I want to vomit, because having seen that big maggot, I wasn't expecting it from like a patient. I've seen maggots before, but not that big. I've seen little tiny ones. You see them doing their little tricks, but for a maggot the size of what you call it, like a pea grain, the regular pea grain. Yes, for a maggot the size of that to be crawling out, and we're not finish it, because we're not take off the linen as yet. So while I was there, I was like, okay, then. So one person was trying to use their hand to kind of move the maggot, my skin already crawling. And then by the time we removed the sheet, this lady had no legs. This lady was like a quarter of a person, So, and the thing about it is that, you see, sometimes, we're in certain situation, and rather than people trying to appreciate what you're doing for them, Sometimes them just rude and feisty and what we call it in Jamaica, them rank. Yeah, man, them not have no manners put on top of it to make the situation worse. So, so all of that, the attitude of the patient and the presentation was like a big turn off. But anyways, we were there. This lady was like quarter of a person. I've never really seen a quarter of a person before. She had what is supposed to be her, her urethra and everything still intact down that side, but her bum and everything was like, it wasn't until we literally started turning this patient, we realized that the dressing that was on the back of this patient down to the bum, like everything was like as black as like a regular car. When you see a car, yeah, the dressing there, it never looked like it changed for decades. This lady, she had like a total ecosystem going on herself there, because the amount of maggots that was there, we were like, okay, then you disturb this kind of environment, you're only putting the patient at risk now for death. So I was there and I'm like, oh no. I literally, when we rolled the patient over, because the guys on because we thought at the time, we thought it was like a regular person, a normal whole body person. So the guys were like rolling, but then it was at that time they realized that, oh, there's nothing down, there's no legs. It was just, arms, and then she had her trunk, but then her back was like, there was so many dressings there that hasn't been changed for a long while. And by the time we moved her over, everything was like just literally falling apart. And so it was just like maggots just dropping. So I had to literally run out of the room because the scent and everything was there. And the guys literally just put her back. And, that was it. When you look on the sheet, it was like just maggots taking over the entire white sheet, incontinent pads on the bed. And that was the worst thing I've ever seen in my entire time doing nursing. I've seen maggots before where you have maggots from the breasts, because you have cancer of the breast and everything, face gone. I see that before, but it was a tiny maggots. I never see these big everlasting maggots like running around looking like, So we were able to, well, not me, because I could not tolerate any of that, but we had another nurse, and God bless that nurse. May I tell us that some people have a strong heart. Like, while I'm there with mask on, oh yeah, I was getting a call. So while I am there, with my mask, with a little perfume, trying to breathe properly, like this nurse, she had no mask on, she had no gown, nothing. She had a little lollipop in her lip. She just went over there and was just like cleaning up, and you can see that she was enjoying what she was doing, and everybody was like standing there just looking, because everybody else was in shock, and she was just over there cleaning. And when I tell you, she took out all the maggots, and then it was at that time I realized we were supposed to get her to CT scan and everything, because now she's on a non-rebreather bag and the whole 9 yards. And so how the ambulance had ended up going for her was, it was a case where she was living in a motel, and apparently somebody smelled, they keep on smelling something, and they reported it, but nobody was doing anything about it. So like another occupant at the motel decided to call the fire department, and they came, kick off the door, and went ahead and took this lady out. So that was it. But we ended up taking her to the CT. She went and had her CT scan done, to look to see if there's anything else down that side. And she ended up going to the ICU, and I don't think she had made it past the week. Yeah, she never made it past the week. So sometimes, we always say, if person's in some situation, yes, in as much as you really want to help them, sometimes when you go and help them, you only, put them 6 feet under a little faster, because I guess over a few years, that was just her environment. Her body was accustomed to that, and so now we went ahead and clean her up and make her looking cute and comfortable, and we think we're treating her, but we never really did justice for her in the end. But the thing about it is that while I'm on this in terms of us as nurses, or not even nurses, you know, when it comes on to documenting, it's always nice to make sure we're documenting and documenting well. Because with this patient, and as much as this patient was, you know, as I say, half of a person or quarter of a person, let's just say, and the fact that she had so much maggots and everything that was happening, I was a little bit disappointed because I wasn't the primary nurse. I was working as a resource nurse at the time. And the person who was the primary nurse was doing the notes. And when the patient was actually transferred to ICU, you know, it was at that time I realized that sometimes we're doing things as nurses and we're not thinking about, you know, the future. You know, when you're doing your documentation, always document that in the event that, so for example, 5 years, 10 years from now, you know, especially if you're travel nurses, you can have a mental picture of what that patient look like. You have some patients that they definitely want to keep it simple with your documentation, you know, because nothing big is going on. And you have some patients who are critically ill. You definitely want to document your entire life away in that one chart, you know, because of the possibilities of a lot of things. And so with that nurse, she went ahead and documented like nothing. The only thing that was documented was like a triage notes. So anyways, when because I usually, if I'm working as resource, I prefer when the nurses go ahead and document their own notes, you know. So I was there, and when we called ICU was asking about, you know, what was happening with the patient. And so she went ahead and told the nurse that this is the situation. So anyways, I was gonna do some documentation, seeing that I was in the room, like some extra documentations there. And she never wrote anything. You know, some people just go in some room, and that's why sometimes I wonder, like, you know, if we're thinking about what we're doing, or we're just doing it for the money, or we're just doing it for, I don't know. But a lot of times I tend to see this where persons, they chart some things, and then you have to sit and have a question mark, you know, at them, because you're wondering, how can you document that this patient has 4 extremities, you know, legs are intact. So this click thing that we have on the system here, I'm gonna really like it. And that's why I like to go to making notes, like free notes. I always put in a lot of notes, like free text in the comment. Wherever you have a section where you can put a comment, I always put a comment there, because later on, if something happens, I like to know that, you know, even if I say that, you know, the person has amputated extremity, I need to know which leg, if it is above knee, below knee, you know, that kind of information, so you can have a mental picture later on. But this tick thing where you have the general assessment in our EMR or charting system, persons just go ahead and just literally click, or oriented and alert, click, you know, extremities, click. And then not, I don't know if they're assessing the patient, or they assess the patient and keep it in their head, and then they just come and just put it on the chart and just click, you know, everything normal. So I was there and I was just like smiling to myself, and I was like, okay then, like, how can you say that everything is normal with this patient when this patient is like quarter of a person? This person doesn't have 4 extremities. So how do you go ahead and justify, you know? So these are the things that you put in the charts, and then when relatives come, them can't come and sue us, you know, the source, because now you have something documented to say that this patient presented with 4 extremities intact, when really and truly this lady only has two arms, you know. This lady don't have no leg, this lady don't have no back, this lady has no bottom, you know. How can you put in there that you have 4 extremities, you know? And then the other part to it is that when you go and you say to the person, you know, you say, hey, you know that the patient don't have, you know, the lower extremity is not there. You need to probably go ahead and fix up the notes to make it reflect how the patient look. You know, these are the same people that get upset with you, you know. They're the same persons that get upset. So I don't even know. It's always just it's always puzzling for me, because you might say to them, look, you probably need to fix up this, but no, they get upset. But then when ICU receive a patient, that is quarter of a body, and they call now to the emergency room. Hello, science kid. When they receive the patient, and in their notes they're seeing where it says that it's an entire person. They're looking through the assessment and they're not seeing one thing to make mention of a maggot. Then they call to the emergency room to talk to the primary nurse. Then everybody get upset, and then they write report. Because we love to write report. So a lot of times you find that they will go ahead and write report, and that could have been prevented by just listening to your own colleagues. So that's the other thing that a lot of times that puzzles me. You might say something to your colleague, they take offense to it, and rather than trying to fix the situation at that time, they just leave it. And then when it leaves out of the department, no one, everybody else start hearing about it, because of the report that you gave to another department, or they hear about it based on the assessment, something going on. Then they get upset about it, and then the other department ends up writing a report that goes on your file, and then everybody starts scrutinize you when it comes on to your notes and all. So it's always nice to kind of take constructive criticism, and regardless of how busy we are, try and find that time. A lot of times I might be working and my shift probably ends at 7, and sometimes 8 o'clock I'm still there charting, and people always asking, why are you still here? And I'm like, yeah, I'm charting because I don't want it to be a case where something happens. Not saying that you're going to be perfect with everything, but I don't want it to be a case where I should have documented something and it wasn't documented, and then something comes up later on, and I'm trying to find out, okay, then, so what was happening with this patient, and I don't have any documentation. So that was just it. And it was the same thing again where we had a trauma patient, a trauma patient where this patient was assaulted. So it wasn't really like a motor vehicle accident. Hi, Isaac's family. Welcome. Thank you for tuning in. It wasn't a case where the patient was like, the patient met in an accident. It was like a family matter where they went ahead and were having like an argument, and somebody used, a hand and fist the person, and she came in with her eyes, she had a raccoon eye, black and blue, and she had a little bit of a blood from her ear. So anyways, we went ahead and activated the trauma when the patient had gotten to the room. And it turned out that, because I was doing resource again, I was resource nurse, I went ahead and activated that. When it comes on to certain protocols, some persons don't really like, doing like a trauma stroke, because a lot of time it's a lot of paperwork, because sepsis, trauma, stroke, all of those are, let's just say, big money, because you have protocols. So companies are going to want to make sure you have the best documentation, and you're meeting the criteria and doing everything so you can actually make a little money, because you're doing what you're supposed to be doing, let's just see. And so the nurse was upset that I went ahead and activated the trauma. And I'm like, when it comes on to certain things, nothing is wrong with activating it, because at least even if the patient doesn't benefit from it, you don't want it to be said that you were the nurse who missed something. So if you feel as though you need to activate it, go ahead and activate it based on your assessment and, what is going on. So I went ahead and activated it just by, looking at the patient. I never needed to hear what the story was, so she was upset that I went ahead and activated the trauma, because the patient was in the department for a few hours and nobody had activated it. So I'm like, it doesn't really matter. Like, you're here now. If you're the nurse, based on your assessment, even if it is a case where the patient has been there for 4 or 5 hours and nobody saw it, you're the primary care nurse now, the primary nurse. So go ahead and activate it. So she was upset that I went ahead and activated it, because now she has documentation to do. And she never did the documentation. At the end of the shift. But it turned out that after I'd activated everything, this patient went to CT and came back having orbital fracture. She had a nasal bone fracture. So it was at that time, no, like, they were going to be transferring this patient. So this patient needed to be transferred out. Um, and she was there. So I said, did we get a chance to do the notes and everything? And she's like, no, we don't need to do the notes because it's just, an assault. And I'm like, yeah, it's just an assault. But at the same time, this patient CT showing that, there's an orbital fracture, multiple, and she has nasal fracture, multiple. So the patient is going to be transferred to another trauma center. So you need to kind of get the paperwork going. So a lot of times, they tend to get upset and I don't know. But, just try to make sure that based on your assessment and all, document whatever you can. If you have certain protocols, regardless of what is happening with the patient, go ahead and activate them, go by them, because in the end, you don't want it to be a case where you missed something and then everybody is going to be like, oh, well, you're the nurse who had the patient for this amount of hours. You should have identified it. No, companies will always want to put the blame on somebody. Let's just see, they're always going to try and find somebody to pin it on. So just make sure we're documenting, we're doing our assessment properly and, charting properly. Don't go and get into this habit of, everything is normal, even when you look and you see that there could never be a way that everything can be normal for this patient when you're seeing maggots for days and the patient has only 2 arms, just make sure we're documenting. That's all. All right, so please remember to go ahead and double tap your screen to give it a thumbs up. All right, and if you haven't subscribed as yet, go ahead and subscribe to the channel for more content related to nursing. So yes, Courtney, that was the worst thing I've ever seen as a nurse, so far. And then I was just kind of giving a little bit of a tip on things regarding assessment. All right, so yeah, but there's so many things out there that I encounter. But the good thing about it is that a lot of these patients, they have home health service. They have home health service if they have like insurance, good insurance that covers it. If they don't have insurance, then Lord, it's sad for them. It's so sad. But yeah, sometimes we're able to set up like meals on wheels for them. We have like, nurses coming in to help with, medications, wound care. But if you don't have any insurance to do that, there's no way for us to provide the service for them. So that's just the biggest challenge that we face. And then the other thing is, now that it is like open enrollment period for insurance, I'm going to get somebody to come and speak on that.